There's a catalogue of errors here. Let's just look. This was the problem. This was Phoenix trying to get the baton unsuccessfully from Tamo.
But the thing was, they had a margin there. They had a margin of error, as it were, because they could have just relaxed.
The twilight's first gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night.
Anxiety affects everyone at some point in their lives. Performance anxiety is a condition of nervousness or dread towards an activity. This behavior can negatively affect the activity being attempted. Anxiety is a common feeling usually described as uneasiness or apprehension. While stress is caused by an existing factor and can sometimes be helpful for getting work done, anxiety is stress that continues even after the stressor is gone. Stress motivates us to get tasks done, but when prolonged stress turns into anxiety, physical and mental effects become more destructive. Stress is useful, but anxiety is only a buildup of negative ideas. It is profound and unfortunate that a minor quiz or a small public speech can leave people in pieces, but it happens every day and to everybody. Students and workers pour their hearts into their assignments, only to have their performance anxiety inadvertently destroy their final products. This condition is highly treatable. However, those suffering are never educated on how to fix these problems. This inevitably leads them into a downward spiral of low self-confidence and closed-minded thinking. Performance anxiety affects all fields from school to sports to work. In this case, Walsingham Academy's 4x1 track team struggles to overcome anxiety minutes before
And we're pretty
the
stressed
race.
about it. Yeah, we've done a 4x1 relay, and the handoffs are like, see, it's like crucial. So like if you're gonna do well or not, because if the handoff or the baton goes outside of your lane, you're disqualified.
Yeah. Dropping the baton.
Yeah.
I would think so, because you're thinking about it too much and you're not focused.
Just practicing.
I don't know.
I feel like it's irrational if you're like a pro and like you've been running for years, but if you're new at it, I definitely don't think it's irrational.
Then I'm not interested.
How do you feel before a race?
Very nervous. Like I want to do a different sport.
Okay.
Suffering from anxiety.
When someone's having an anxiety episode in the brain, a lot of things happen. The nervous system kicks in. It becomes on the defense mode, fight or flight. During this time, the body takes all the mechanisms that it needs to prepare itself to combat an enemy. And it usually pinpoints on the threat. Whether it's a person or a thought or a task, it zeroes in on the threat, and it tends to ignore everything else, the bigger picture. And oftentimes the big picture is what helps you pull out of anxiety. But just the nature of being in the fight or flight mode, it triggers you to think on a smaller level. You want to solve the problem at hand, you want to defend yourself at hand, and you might miss the big picture. People often report cognitive problems like having trouble with concentration, with focus on other things. It influences and negatively impacts your ability to take a test because your thoughts are racing about your performance and how you're going to do and how threatening it could be if you don't do as well as you wanted to do. And it just really clouds the mind's ability to just learn the information, to read things in front of it and produce the result it needs to do. Because it is so afraid and it's defending itself. You can miss little details when you're in that mode.
The fight or flight response overrides the prefrontal cortex, which isn't needed for fighting, fleeing, or surviving. This was a useful trait back when cavemen had to defend themselves to stay alive. Now, survival in the first world is different. Survival means passing a test or winning a race. People are suffering at evolution's inability to catch up.
I get
Currently anxious on.
I get anxious over everything, like college and homework and grades and tests and quizzes and track and cross country and life. When I get anxious, I end up getting, like, over one thing, I end up getting anxious over everything. So it's just kind of like spreads to every other aspect of my life. And it, like, I lose a lot of sleep because of anxiety. And I don't, like, perform well in sports when I'm really anxious, I guess, or on tests and anything. Every conscious minute of my life.
I'm sorry.
Well, when I'm anxious, I tend to shut down, so I usually, like, I can't do what I'm about to do, like, aka homework. Like, when I'm really anxious about homework, I'm like, I can't do it anymore because I get so anxious.
When I'm anxious, I want to cry and sleep in bed all day for like an entire week, and then I want to eat a lot of pasta.
Usually I just want to curl up in my bed, like, a little cup of tea, and try and be happy.
Try.
Yeah, I feel sick to my stomach and like I can't think straight because I'm so worried about like failing or something.
What affects it?
It makes it a lot harder to think straight when you're taking a test, and when you're trying to study, you're more focused on like what you're going to get on the test rather than learning the material.
It's not fun. My hands shake when I get anxious, and I can't concentrate. Yeah, especially like for the first question, if I don't know what it is, I freak out and I think the test is going to be impossible. So I kind of blank when that happens. So 99% of the time, yeah.
Necessarily, because, you know, like if you take a test and you're just like, you didn't get enough sleep the night before, or you have a major headache or something along those lines, like, you know, and if you just like have a momentary like blink, like everyone has, you know, it can really like damage your score, and it's just like in the moment kind of thing. Whereas like if I were to look back on that question I got wrong, I could say, oh wait, I knew that, I just kind of forgot it in the moment.
Is that what happened to you?
Yes, I could not think. I thought the multiple choice was fine, but for the free response, I couldn't think. I ceased to think.
Anxious people with excessive and ongoing worry become edgy and irritable. Right before and during their performance, they feel fear. Fear may lead to body paralysis, in which the performers are unable to move, talk, or act at all, reducing them to a quivering bowl of jello. Performers also suffer an inability to concentrate, racing heart, shortness of breath, sweating, and shaking. People with an anxiety disorder may exhibit social withdrawal, changes in personality, relationship problems, frequent emotional and physical health issues, compulsive behaviors, and alcohol or drug abuse. However, some anxiety effects are more long-lasting and life-threatening, and affect health more than social behavior.
Long-term health effects. Oftentimes, people with anxiety, which is I have to say the most common mental health disorder there is in the United States. It is linked to cancer. It is linked to heart disease. It's linked to diabetes. The hormone cortisol is produced in the body when you're feeling anxious and ready to fight or flight or flee. And having that hormone in your body for a while, it actually produces more body fat, and it can eventually lead to more heart disease, more likelihood towards stroke. And there's just a myriad of health disorders that are linked to anxiety, prolonged anxiety. You know, a lot of times people self-medicate when they're feeling anxious to try to change that brain state, and they either drink alcohol, they eat food to try to change their brain state. Some people self-medicate with drugs, and whether it's over-the-counter drugs or drugs like marijuana, things like that to try to calm down. I think a lot of our prescription drug abuse disorder, the opiate painkiller drug abuse disorder, is linked to anxiety. Oftentimes I've seen people come off those drugs, pain reliever drugs, opiates, and they had all along been masking an anxiety disorder.
One patient that I saw that had an anxiety disorder, and this guy had acute performance anxiety. So if you asked him to do anything, he would have a lot of anxiety, and it would cause him to have shakes and jitters. And this one time we were having lunch, and I forgot about his extreme anxiety, and I asked him to put his dinner tray away, or his lunch tray. So he was like, are you sure you want me to do that? And I was like, yeah, put it away like everybody else. Because all the other patients were putting their trays on the cart to be sent back to the kitchen. So he grabbed his tray and he stood up and he started taking one step towards the tray cart, and he started shaking, and he went, and just everything just sort of went flying everywhere, and there was cups flying all over, and there was hot dogs sticking out of the ceiling, and he was like, I told you not to make me do stuff, I have performance anxiety. And I was like, oh, that's horrible. But anyway, it was a big mess. We had to clean up. But yeah, he had an extreme case, for sure. Probably the most extreme I've ever seen.
Just like stress is the gateway to anxiety, anxiety is the gateway to burnout, panic attacks, and depression. When the body perceives itself to be under constant siege, it begins to break down. Life begins to look bleak and sad. For instance, since Japan has no legal limits on working hours, businessmen and women are under constant stress with no relief. Some even literally die from overwork, a phenomenon known as karoshi. Performance anxiety is an animalistic tendency that reduces us to deer in the headlights. As a civilized race, how do we stop the suffering and transcend our own problems? How do we reverse this backwards way of thinking and channel our stress in a more positive and useful way?
The best thing I've done to manage anxiety is to cut my caffeine intake, to work on my thoughts about the things I'm worried about. So, because often we have sort of inflated thoughts, and to like lighten up, and to do yoga because it helps you work anxiety out of your body. Meditation is incredible for helping anxiety because it helps slow down your nervous system. It teaches you to kind of make space between reaction to something that happens and responding.
No, I care. I just feel like getting stressed isn't going to help you at all. So it's better to just think you're going to do well and then you're going to perform better.
No, because I only think about the stuff I'm going to do right, and I don't think of the potentiality of doing something wrong.
In the end, the feeling of anxiety depends on genetics, brain chemistry, life events, and personality. While we cannot change these factors, we can change the way we perceive and handle life events. It is important to observe relaxed behaviors on top of taking all these steps if anxiety is to be eradicated from schools and workplaces. If students, athletes, musicians, and other performers take steps to feel more relaxed, allow themselves time to be at ease, and realize that tests, races, and other performances aren't life or death situations, symptoms of anxiety can be avoided. The true meaning of life is not to be measured by our performances, but to enjoy presenting our skills to the public. Don't let anxiety take the joy away from your life.